week, Surfing the MASH Tsunami brings you 3 major stories from the world of steatotic liver disease. This weekend, we're bringing you each of these stories separately so you can listen over a shorter, discrete period of time. Hope you enjoy them.
For the last 5 years, MASLD stakeholders, whether manufacturers, trial sites, providers, payers, patients, or investors, have turned to surfing the MASH tsunami to keep track of drug and device development, epidemiology, public health initiatives, and practice patterns. This weekend, we are sharing the 3 main sections from our episode 11. Roger will provide more information after these notes from our sponsors.
Surfing the MASH Tsunami is sponsored by these healthcare-related organizations.
Regeneron is a leading biotechnology company that invents, develops, and commercializes life-transforming medicines for serious diseases. Founded and led by physician scientists, their unique ability to repeatedly translate science into medicine has led to numerous approved treatments and product candidates in development, most of which were homegrown in their laboratories. They are shaping the next frontier of medicine with data-powered insights from the Regeneron Genetics Center and pioneering genetic medicine platforms, enabling them to identify innovative targets and complementary approaches to potentially treat diseases like obesity and MASH.
LiverRight and the LiverRight Scanning Network. LiverRight is America's first virtual specialty clinic for liver disease, offering adults in all 50 states video appointments and helping GI practices and health systems triage and treat the swelling numbers of patients seeking MASLD and MASH testing. LiverRight offers same-week video visits and accepts insurance. For more information, contact LiverRight. That's liver then R-I-G-H-T as if one word, at www.liverright.com.
Tawazun Health, your partner in global liver health innovation. At Tawazun Health, we specialize in providing small or large-scale access to FibroScan examinations for liver health-focused early detection, clinical trials, independent research, and collaborative projects with clinicians and FibroScan providers, now in over 30 countries around the globe. As industry-leading experts, we design and deliver high-quality FibroScan services because we know that accurate, high-quality, reliable data drives better outcomes. To learn about Tawazun Health or our sister lifestyle app, mylife365.me, click the Tawazun Health link on the Surfing MASH homepage. This week continues with the second half of our Multi-Metabolic Week Roundtable, moderated by Louise Campbell and including Dr. Karen Jerome Zapadka of Trajectory Health Partners in the U.S., and Dr. Alfonso Lopez Alba and Irene Lopez, both from the EDOM clinic in Spain.
While the first conversation focused on diagnosis and treatment of patients and history of how the clinics were formed, this one involves issues dealing with the impact of having multi-metabolic practices. It starts by looking at how practices train other physicians on various multi-metabolic issues. For EDOM in Spain, they have national certification to train on nutrition. Trajectory Health Partners, which is just getting started, has less formal, but they do train people on how to interpret and use the different scanning devices. From there, it shifts to the difference between how patients are treated, key difference here involving length of visit and the use of collateral specialists, particularly in Spain, to support the broader goal. And then finally, Louise goes on to 2 other issues. Number one is there data proving that we're reducing hospitalizations or saving money or saving lives, specifically through the use of this clinic? Again, EDOM in Spain, with a larger footprint and longer history, has that data. Trajectory Health Partners doesn't really. And then finally, she asks how each physician would sell the idea of a multi-metabolic practice back to their colleagues. In Karen's case, gastroenterologists in the U.S., in Dr. Lopez Alba's case, endocrinologists in Spain. The answers are different in some ways, similar in others, and quite revealing.
Okay, so we're going to ask each of you just to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about yourselves. Tell us where you sit within the field. And I'll start with Karen for that. And then we want to know one single thing that most of your friends and family might not know so much about, or work colleagues. And we've had Jeff Lazarus running with the Bulls in Pamplona. We've had Nigel Ferguson wearing gold lame shorts as a Take That tribute. We've had all sorts of stuff, I assure you. To Alina inner Alan playing music and folk music and things like that. So we get the weird and wacky out of everybody. So give us one back. But let's start with Karen. Karen, tell us a bit about yourself and where you sit within the space of multi-metabolic clinics.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here. So I am a community physician practicing in the community. Started out as a gastroenterologist from the University of Pittsburgh. I did all of my training there and started out as a gastroenterologist. And it wasn't long before I began to see, the devastations of the obesity epidemic with multiple cancers, and then turning from hepatitis C and treating that well to coming into this steatotic liver disease epidemic. It hit me to the point that I realized that I needed to have more training. So I went back about a decade ago and got my board certification in obesity medicine. Was one of the first physicians in the Pittsburgh area, in the Beaver County area where I am outside of Pittsburgh, to get that certification. And along the way, I was exposed to a number of other medical organizations, one of which was an organization called Low Carb USA, now the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. I went to their first conference in 2019, really began to understand insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. And from there, my practice dramatically changed. And I began to practice in the community, primarily with fatty liver patients, metabolic syndrome patients, pre-diabetics, diabetics. And the focus now is clearly on disease reversal, drug de-escalation. We totally changed how our obesity practice was teaching patients. We now are in a new practice where we're implementing health coaching, which is so important. We have a fitness instructor with us, a nurse practitioner, and so it is a much more comprehensive type of setting for the patients, but it is strictly around low carb and very low carb approaches to these patients that have metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance. And we're seeing phenomenal results now, and we can talk about that.
That's wonderful. And one little fact that we might not know about you.
Well, I shared this with some people, and so I myself had insulin resistance about a decade ago and understood this from my training that I was getting and totally turned it around, and I'm fine today and actually very healthy. But I had to struggle with the fact that I am a very good baker, and I am the holder of family recipes, pierogi from our Polish side and ravioli from our Italian side, and these are huge traditions and recipes passed down for generations. And we also have a wedding coming up, and we do something called the Pittsburgh Cookie Table, where we have all the friends and family baking cookies, as well as myself. I'll probably bake at least 15 kinds. So we'll have over 170 dozen cookies at the wedding, probably 50 different types of cookies. So it's a huge tradition in our area. And of course, it's a very special. We only do it every so often now. I don't bake like I used to, but I still try to hold on to all the family recipes that have been literally handed down for generations.
I do not envy your task or the gene pool from both sides of that family when we're sitting here talking about insulin resistance. And
exactly. So yes, we have come to grips with that.
Thank you for that. That was really interesting. And Dr. Lopez Alba, thank you for joining us from Spain.
In the north of Spain, the studios in the north of Spain, Gijón, in the north of Spain.
And you are an endocrinologist by background, aren't you? And you run multi-metabolic clinics. And I think that's why this episode is so exciting, bringing extra or additional speciality to liver disease, and we're the smaller part of the metabolic syndrome part. So tell us about the clinic, tell us about you, and you've got a colleague with you if you introduce her, and that would be useful.
Yeah, I'm Irene Lopez, and I will also be kind of the translator and the data analyst of all of the clinic, and I will be speaking in English. And well, the clinic, first of all, was formed in 2022. And it was just a project started only by him, because all of his life trajectory, ever since he graduated, he specialized in endocrinology, and he went to many congresses all around the world, United States, went all over Europe to know more and more about endocrinology, specializing in diabetes and also focusing on thyroid. We could say diabetic people and metabolism and all of these issues. And yeah, the clinic was formed 3 years ago, and it's at the very north of Spain, as he said. and everything's going quite well. There are not many clinics like the one that is here because we count with a lot of instruments that not many clinics have. We even made a kind of a small presentation that we could show with the instruments that we have to assess patients and everything. And we have the FibroScan, which is one of the tools that we have implemented in March 2025. And so far, we've done 182 FibroScans on people and have 462 people with tirzepatide, sorry. And we are experimenting with these new medications that are coming out, which are completely a revolution for us. And he's dedicated his whole life to finding how to help people with obesity, as it is a really important disease that is sometimes overlooked and even stigmatized. And we could say that.
And that's wonderful. That's really exciting. And I think that's one of the reasons that we wanted a different field, because we speak to hepatologists and people within the MASLD and MASH field an awful lot, as you'd expect. So it's nice to bring new people into the speciality, but it's nice to see that other specialities are becoming aware of the liver beneath. So one fact about Dr. Lopez Alba he's prepared to share about that most people wouldn't know.
Algo que quieras decir que no mucha gente sabría.
The liver is really the...
No, pero algo sobre ti.
About me.
About him, yeah.
30 years of work in the endocrinology.
What I can say about him is that when he was young, he used to dance very well. Yeah, that's something I know. I was told.
Wonderful. One of the things that really excited me about your clinic was that you do a training program to train people for the quality of the care that they give for their patients. And that's quite, well, it's a 2-day, from what I can gather, quite intensive, quite constructive, and it involves all of the FibroScan and you give them a certificate of quality at the end of it. Now, as somebody who advocates that whilst FibroScan is a beautiful assessment for me, because it's the only one that I've not had the luxury of having access to Velacur or Escopic's hepatoscope, for example. Whilst I've had a couple of hepatoscope tests myself, I quite like it, but I don't get to work with the devices. But the quality for me is of utmost importance, because the more we roll out non-invasive diagnostics into areas that are less specialized, my concern is the quality of the IQR levels rise and what we accept as an acceptable scan, and they can be totally different. So as a geek on this area and writing quality and governance standards and trying to get our IQRs less than 10% on as many patients as we can to make that quality metric, it excited me that you did this training and acknowledged that was a potential risk to the care and the quality when we use non-invasive diagnostics. And there's a lot of noise sometimes about FibroScan as to different intraoperative users, but they talk about the kilopascals and the cap. They don't talk about the IQR differential, which is actually the quality metric. So there's a lot of missing information when we talk about the noise. So how do you get physicians and people to come in and do your training and do that? And how do they find it?
Many people come to the training because, first of all, we have amazing professionals who teach very well to do the nutritional trainings, and the tools that we offer are not offered in many clinics.
Okay.
Hemos elegido una de las 4 clínicas de toda España.
We have been selected actually about that as one of the 4 clinics in Spain to teach of all Spain to teach about nutritional health and how to train about it.
También te lo he sido.
And for the obesity treatment.
Congratulations!
Thank you very much. So it's that, and we are going to do it in October, and that's very much it.
You might be inundated by lots of people in Spain wanting to do your training.
Yeah, maybe.
Karen, do you offer training? Do you offer support and the quality metrics, which are often seen as some of the risks and challenges of newer initiatives like
Yes,
this?
I haven't thought about that for our GI practice in a while, only because we've had the FibroScan for several years. Same two technicians doing, well, actually three. We have three that have been certified, and they've been doing it for years. With the Velacur, that was definitely a learning curve, but they have great technical support. If we have any issue that we think the scan is not of quality, we just get them on the phone. They get onto the computer as we're doing the scan. And so they are there with us as our technician is doing the scan and can make sure that everything is right. And it's been a learning curve, but I think we have it. The scans are good quality. They do an audit on us to make sure that they're good quality every quarter. They audit us. They audit our scans. So we know that they're passing the grade as far as quality.
And I think that's exactly where we need to go in the context. For me, it's about quality.
Yes, no question.
I can only trust the results. And as any of these devices roll out, people know the scores. And they know the scores within a biopsy-proven range from clinical trials. So it's really, really important that the less we use biopsy, the more this becomes a meta-analysis review, because we don't have biopsy-proven evidence that you have alcohol or that you have autoimmune or you have MASLD or MASH. So we're basing a lot of this on non-invasive diagnostics. So we do need to look at the quality. And a lot of people can't read an elastogram, for example. And I can make, depending on where that angle of the probe is, you can really make that elastogram also, depending on the patient breathing in, the patient breathing out, the size of the liver underneath. All of these things mean that if you don't get the same point consistently, you might not. But actually, if you've only done limited supervision, it becomes difficult. So the more, for me, that we enlarge the amount of areas that we're placing or choosing to use these technologies, the better we control that we're all singing from the same hymn book. We're all being things. So it's great to know that you've got that on call for quality. What do you think are the biggest challenges going forward from what you've learned in setting up these clinics in sort of particularly the US funding and reimbursement, for example? Will we see more and a rapid rise of multi-metabolic clinics across the US, do you think?
I think one of the issues, and now I can compare and contrast my new practice with my existing GI practice. The existing GI practice is volume, it's 15 minutes per follow-up, and my new practice is an hour for each new patient and 30 minutes for follow-up. These are complex patients, and if you're looking at it from the metabolic standpoint, you are looking at it from the whole patient standpoint, not just the liver standpoint. These patients take time. I just texted my nurse practitioner a few weeks ago when I was at my regular GI practice. I said, I only had 15 minutes with this patient. There was so much to review. I couldn't do it. I can't wait to get back to the new office where we have 30 minutes to really dig into each of the issues. It is very time consuming. And so the reimbursements are much less. You're seeing fewer and fewer patients. But the flip side of that is the success that you're seeing, the outcome that you're seeing can be so much greater. And so the reimbursement pattern is just going to have to change to allow the time to treat these patients, to improve them, because then in the end, just by drug de-escalation alone, you're saving so much money. A friend of mine, Tro Kalajian out of New York, he has a practice called Toward Health. They just published an article that talked about the thousands of dollars they saved a company in just drug expenses. It was phenomenal. And so I think we really have to begin to think about how can we allow more time per patient, but recognizing the reward financially will be at the end when you have cured the patient, put things into remission, drug de-escalation. So it's really going to take a big change in thinking about that.
Do you see on that point, do you see less hospital admissions because you're getting them healthier? Do you see less loss of work time? So these are all financial rewards and quality metrics for me. If I'm a person, for my quality of life, I'm back to work, I'm having those conversations, I'm getting my life back. So it's more than just drug costs from what you're describing.
Absolutely.
Both of you were describing the entire portfolio around a patient and healthcare system improving. Is that right?
We have to say something about that, about regarding the costs. Well, first of all, he worked both in the public healthcare system and in the private healthcare system. Once he started putting sensors for the glucose meters and all of that, he started seeing how there were many people not going to the emergency rooms because they could control their glucose at home. How people didn't have low glucose or higher levels of glucose because they were controlled. And once you control things from the root, you catch things from the start, you don't see as many costs medically related. You can see how everything goes lower regarding the prices and the costs of people in the healthcare system. So once you treat the problem from the root, it is much more cost efficient. However, it is very in the private system, it is very expensive to do that. And in the public system, sometimes they don't allow doctors to put too many sensors because they are too expensive. So it's kind of difficult at the same time. How can we take care of people if we don't have the money to do so? And if people don't have the money to go to the private consult, how can we take care of them? And it's kind of a hard situation sometimes, but it is demonstrated that if you do spend a bit more money on people to take care of them consistently and with healthcare systems that are good for them, such as sensors, glucose sensors, you can see the decrease in costs. But that is something that it is difficult. And that's what he's fighting for, that he wants to demonstrate, and how investing a bit more can show such results, such incomes. It's amazing. But some people don't see it and just see short-term measures as better measures. And that's what he does not believe in. And that's also our point. And we had a question regarding the prices in the US about all of the, for example, clinic, a FibroScan, for example, how much could it be, for example, in each country?
For the patient.
If a patient were to self-pay for a Velacur, that would be anywhere between $120, $135 for self-pay. And most insurances are paying for it and reimbursing maybe around $90, somewhere around there on average.
I think if you look at the UK system, for example, because it's an internal market, we forget that it might be free at the point of care for all patients, but it's an internal market where everybody fights for their own piece of pie. So you get a referral cost for a GP every time they see a GP. So depending on the area of the country, you used to require a consultant hepatologist to refer you for a FibroScan. So in London, by the time you get all the appointments and get that referral, a FibroScan could work out at £750 to get to. And that's the NHS. Nobody ever sees the money, and it all gets
how much?
Things. So there's a lot of income, about £750, because you pay a GP for their appointment, you pay blood tests, you pay a consultant referral, you see that appointment, and that can be a long time. We have changed that system, but it's not particularly available where you can have a FibroScan in the community. But most primary care, rather like endocrine clinics, don't really want to see a machine in their own clinic because it might not get utilized as much as it should be. And then if you don't do enough scans, you don't have the quality. So there's which is one of the reasons we provide straight in speciality nurses and do it, and just do it. If you only want 10, you only get 10, for example. So we have a different approach, but different parts of the country will have different costs. And that's just primarily the way the internal system works. If you look at Australia, where I also get the privilege to work, this is not on Medicare. It's not in primary care. As a hepatology nurse, by the time we get you to a hepatology unit, we usually know you've either got abnormal liver function tests, and 93% of you are going to be sent back with fatty liver to be managed in primary care, or we know we've got a good idea that you are going to have a liver disease. So we've got a fairly good idea by the time you get that FibroScan. So there is no real self-pay option other than $200 or $300 to get it. And in private health in the UK, a private insurance company will way pay over the odds. They will pay £450 for a FibroScan. But that FibroScan comes with a consultant's cost. So there's another £300. So even in private care, it comes packaged. You can't, apart from through Towers and Health, you can't buy your own FibroScan and things like that. And it is regulated activity in the UK. So it comes with regulatory quality metrics and governance, which has to happen to be able to deliver FibroScan. It's an ultrasound device, and that's regulated in the UK. It's not regulated a lot of places like the US, Karen, and I don't think it's regulated in Spain. So there's lots of other areas, but we hear of stories from around the world of different metrics. Michael Battelle talks a lot about not being able to get things like AST in the US. So you can't do a basic FIB4. We can't make the simple tests accessible to even get the more complex tests. But I think all three of you have described very, very well the benefits to the patient of holistic all-round care and the financial benefits to the healthcare system of that. But the complexities around commissioning, nobody knows who owns it. It's previously been owned, MASLD and MASH has always been owned by the liver side. And now there's an awareness increasing in endocrinology and cardiology, which will, for me, I think it will drive it into endocrinology more than anywhere else. And that multi-metabolic clinics that you advocate so well and have got some great results from is the real gold pinnacle on the top of the pyramid there. But I think what I tend to feel will happen is that endocrinology will then refer those who have picked up with advanced liver stiffness for further investigation within hepatology and ruling out all of the other markers that we need. And I just wondered when I was listening to Karen whether or not she feels that from her gastro side that she's better referring these patients into the obesity medicine side of the Multi-Metabolic Clinic to get the longer appointments, to get the quality of care where that's required. Do you cross-refer to yourself by interest?
Well, that's basically what was happening at my GI practice. I got my board certification in obesity medicine a decade ago, and they allowed me to start a small obesity clinic there, Valley Gastro Center for Obesity Medicine. We took out part of medical records and put 2 exam rooms there, so it was this private little area, and we started our own obesity medicine center there. So it was wonderful. So interspersed in my day of seeing multiple GI patients, I would have true obesity medicine patients, and most of them were fatty liver patients that needed more care than what we could give in the other model. And so we allowed them more time to be seen. That was the biggest part of it. We allowed more time. We had a dietitian, we had a fitness expert, we had a body comp machine, and it was all for the obesity medicine patients. So I guess it was sort of self-referral. Mostly my partners were referring to me. These were patients that they just could not help, and they knew that they needed extra care, so they were funneled into the obesity part of it. The reason I started our new practice is because I'm going part-time for my GI practice. And once I saw what my schedule was going to look like, it wasn't going to allow me to do that anymore there. And we were having such phenomenal success with patients, I did not want to give it up. And so I'm just 2 days a week now in this new center, just doing metabolic syndrome, obesity medicine, steatotic liver disease. That's the prime focus there.
And can I ask both centres, are you seeing a rise in liver cancer? It is predicted that 1 in 6 people with diabetes are on the pathway to cirrhosis. Are those the genuine type of field that you see in clinic, or is it younger? I've spoken to a palliative care nurse not so long ago, and they are starting to see liver cancer come through into the palliative care system, and they're younger.
No question.
Previously.
No question. And when you look at metabolic syndrome, and this is one of the slides that we use when we teach patients about metabolic syndrome, you are at risk for a multitude of cancers, not just hepatic, which is certainly on the rise, but pancreatic, breast, ovarian, renal, esophageal, gastric, a multitude of cancers. And that's one of the slides that we get to motivate them that, look, if we can get this metabolic syndrome resolved, your risk of cancer will certainly go down. I've seen several patients with cancer over the years, both hepatic, definitely multiple pancreatic and uterine cancers in women. I've seen quite a bit of. And younger, we do colonoscopy several thousand a year. We diagnose younger and younger patients with colon cancer for sure.
And Dr. Lopez-Alba, do your clinics see more and more liver cancer rising?
We have not seen a rise of liver cancer because once we see that our patients reach a level of cirrhosis, they are directly going to digestive. We refer them to digestive because they are way more specialized, of course, in all of those aspects, and we refer them immediately. And we've seen more fatty liver cases, but any liver cancer has not been recorded yet in the clinic, because the cancers are mainly taken care of by the public healthcare system. The private system does not see cancers. You cannot afford it. In Spain, you cannot afford to see a cancer privately. We have not seen a rise because that's how that it works differently, but we have seen people with cirrhosis and that can get close to that situation that we've seen way more times.
As a last question from me, I'm going to ask both of you what you would say to your endocrine colleagues about utilizing and making, or even your hepatology colleagues and cardiology, about the benefits of multi-metabolic clinics and that combining of hepatology assessments that are specialized with the specialized body assessments that you guys do. And like Karen, you were talking about the calcium scores, for example. If you had a whole range of endocrinologists, cardiologists, and hepatologists in there, how would you sell having a multi-metabolic clinic for patients?
I think the model would work, no question. Metabolic syndrome affects every cell of the body, every organ of the body. Every subspecialist, no matter what you are in, needs to be involved with treating the metabolic syndrome. You could argue that we should bring nephrologists into it, gynecologists into it. The PCOS epidemic that we're seeing is certainly driven a lot by insulin resistance. So everyone needs to understand that we are all seeing the metabolic syndrome. We should all be in this together. Instead of each of us in the silo treating our small part of it, we all have to be part of a group that's looking at the entirety of the patient, not just what's going on with them at this moment, but what are their risks for other diseases that we should be watching for. And above all, how can we reverse this as quickly as possible?
Yeah, and it does feel from what everybody said so far that it's a win-win for insurance companies to get in earlier, to find patients before they develop type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular problems and things. But Dr. Lopez-Alpa, I'm a new endocrinologist into the field and I don't think liver has much to do with it. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Well, actually, he believes that endocrinology is the protagonist of everything related, and that everything is going to be connected to this, and that eventually people will notice that everything related to hormones has more importance than people do actually give the credit. It is way more important, and actually our clinic, it's named EDOM. EDOM, E-D-O-M. E for endocrinologist, D for diabetes, O for obesity, and M for metabolism. We are multi-metabolism, and we believe that we are going to make a change with the clinic, because we don't see the person with only, let me see your hormones in this aspect. No, it's way more than only that. Everything has to be inspected, and we believe that endocrinologists are the future, and it's just the right. It's a good specialty in our opinion.
That's so good, because I agree with you. I think endocrinology is the major part. It is the massive population of type 2 diabetes and the endocrine. And I agree with both of you. And you've sold it to me, but I was already on the page. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are already on the page. It's unusual for us to do a podcast. Yes, Roger hasn't been able to attend due to technical, he's lost power, I believe. So he's not around. But that whole holistic approach, I think we became too siloed. We wrote the liver out of the story of our health, and it is biting us in the rear end. We now have had to write it back into the story of health rather rapidly to look at the report this week out from the Lancet about liver cancer doubling by 2050. There was a beautiful TV program or a report on last night. A bunch of 24-year-olds took part in some clinical research, and 1 in 5 24-year-olds in a particular region in Bristol have fatty liver already and are seeing the metabolic. Now they're 24. So this does not bode well for where we're going. But they were assessed by FibroScan, and it's one of those non-invasive tools. or Velacur or hepatoscope, for example, could be used in primary care. Find the liver beneath, rule it out. Don't wait to rule it in. We need to rule it out, as you guys have been saying, in this whole metabolic, every cell is affected. The conductor of our orchestra needs regular assessment. And we are now desperately across the globe trying to recognize and put it back into a story that it should never have been written out of. So getting these assessments and this, I love the idea of multi-metabolic. And I think what we need is multi-comorbidity nurse specialists and multi-metabolic nurse specialists who can talk the whole, rather than I'm just a diabetes nurse. And not just because they are nurses, but they're very valuable parts of the pathway. But we all need to be talking about the same nutritional input from a nursing perspective. We have, as nurses in allied health, we often have the longest opportunity with a person. And we tend to do the FibroScans. And I think the liver screen study that was in the late breakers at EASL this year monitored that 66% of improvement in liver health from one scan to the next. They're the ones who can probably be well managed in primary care, not thing. And just on a last note, do either of you do virtual clinics to monitor your patients between the physical assessments?
We have the capability to do virtual visits, definitely. I mean, since we're just getting up and running, it's been 6 months. We haven't done that yet, but our first patient that we saw yesterday his next follow-up will be virtual. The other thing that I don't think we've talked about is the whole role of health coaching, which I think is huge. Our 2 health coaches are certified out of the Nutrition Network out of South Africa, which is a low-carb organization. They actually published the first textbook called Ketogenic. So they have a very rigorous training program that you go through to become a certified Nutrition Network certified health coach. We have 2 of those. They are invaluable. As the physician, we're assessing and we're sort of writing the prescription for what should happen. And certainly we do motivational interviewing and get into great depth with the patients, but it's the health coach that actually teaches the patient, how is that patient going to implement this in their own life and what they're facing and the struggles and their jobs and their children and all of the stressors of their life. How are they going to make this happen? The health coaches have been just invaluable. 2 of them that have been certified were actually patients of mine that did our program and thrived, reversed their fatty liver, their insulin resistance, and wanted to get more information. So they went through the training. They've been invaluable.
Fantastic. And the Global Liver Institute, for example, do the 3A training where patients become advocates around the world.
Yes.
So they're not nutritional advocates, and I certainly did a nutritional course that took me over a year to complete from start to finish to get certified in that. And it's mind-boggling that they, even within that nutritional course, they very rarely mentioned fatty liver, but it wasn't a hot topic. It just needs to be more overtly covered. And Dr. Alba, do you have nutritional coaches and life coaches?
Yes, we have a nurse, which is a nutritional coach, which is absolutely amazing and essential for the clinic. And it is very nice because he wants to bring her here real quick to show the nurse if he could. Yeah, well, he's going. And
He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
We're not sending out a video just to reassure you.
This is our nurse. She's Flor. Hi. And yeah.
Nice to meet you. And I'm, as a nurse practitioner and consultant myself, I am absolutely delighted that your lead doctor hauls the nurse in to show how important she is. And I think everybody should do that, and I'll give you a certificate.
Nurses are very important, and people sometimes don't give as much importance, but they are essential. And she gives both nutritional, it helps them to motivate them. That motivation is also very important. She does it very well. And yeah, it's a really nice team. And we think that both nurses, doctors, and everything make an amazing team, and that all people should get credit for their work. Yes, that's it regarding.
And I think that's great. Wonderful. Now, I am going to call it to an end because we could discuss this and I can talk this topic forever, as our listeners will know. But the last thing that I just wanted to finish on was, how do the patients receive it? everything you've described describes patients thriving in this type of environment. That genuinely how you feel that the majority of patients respond really well to having this multimorbidity support across the spectrum. Karen, is that right?
We just had this conversation yesterday because our two patients were basically bookends. They were both young, late 30s to early 50s. They both had significant fatty liver with F1 fibrosis by Velacur, metabolic syndrome across the board. One came in having done nothing that we had talked about since his last visit. The other one came in thriving, and I mean thriving, looked like a different person. The one that was thriving and looked like a different person, he's like, it was so easy. You told me exactly what to do. I did it, and look where I am. The one that was struggling, our first thought always when someone is struggling, and we screen for this, are they having food addiction issues, sugar addiction issues, mental health issues? I don't want to make it a blanket statement, but many times that's the difference. And we use something called an UNCOPE score that tries to get out, could they have a sugar addiction, a sugar addiction? And we look back, wow, very high on that score, and they do struggle.
Wonderful. And I think on the episodes that have just been released or just coming for release and will have been by the time this one does, I raised some concerns by when we get Mounjaro and semaglutide for the real world population and MASLD, and where will we see it like we've seen for just weight loss medication? Because of the amount of complexities you guys described, the level of those clinics that are currently using those for just weight loss do need to add an awful lot more, like psychiatry, nutrition, rather than just we're going to send you and do a few blood tests. So I think what you've both portrayed really, really well is the complexity of using obesity medication in a MASH environment, really, and people with advanced liver disease. And I've read some of the patient reviews of Dr. Albert's clinic, and they were glowing. And I'm sure your patients really, really respond to your environment. And I think that's what you see, isn't it? Your patients respond very, very well to the level of care that goes in and the way that you communicate with them.
Yes, actually, they make an absolute effort on trying to communicate clearly what the issue is, how they can deal with it, how there can be struggles, how anything can happen, and how they have to follow certain things to make them better. But I think that the clinic is very centered in the person, and that is transmitted to the person that goes next to the doctors. They see that they are centered in them, and that they are not only saying like, what do you have? What are your symptoms? They are more than that, and they analyze them in a deep way. And yeah, that's why there are so many good reviews of the clinic, because it is good. The professionals are good, and yeah, we believe that.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for coming on and sharing your experiences, because I think for me it's really important that endocrinologists around the world listen to this, and hepatologists really link in with their endocrinology colleagues and cardiology, and yes, kidney. We could do the whole lot. But thank you very much for coming on and joining us for such a fascinating discussion. And I love these type of discussions, as everybody will know. It's a shame Jean Schartenberg wasn't here, because he's enjoying a well-earned break, because of course he's now multi-metabolic within his department in Germany. But thank you very much for joining us.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
On behalf of the surfers, our guests, and our sponsors, Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, LiverRight, and Talazun Health, thanks for joining us this week.
Please join us again next week when we share Louise's and Roger's choices for the big story of the first 6 months, plus an interview from The Vault, your favorite and most listened to from among our past year's episodes.
And until next week, stay safe, surf on, and we'll see you again on Surfing the Tsunami Podcast. Bye-bye now.